Hello, good morning. I am Nancy Delanoche with ACT-IAC. Welcome to today's IoT Smart Infrastructure Working Group meeting. I would like to make a quick announcement and invite everyone to attend the Emerging Technologies COI member meeting this month. It is next week, December 14th. The meeting will be virtual, and the topic will actually be a good partner and complement to what you're discussing now regarding the most recent AI executive order. I will put the link on the chat where you can register, and I hope to see you there. Thank you. Let me pass this on to Mike Burkholz.
Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Burkholz with GSA. I'm one of the co-chairs of the IoT Smart Infrastructure Working Group here under the Emerging Technologies Community of Interest. Our group, we have, I'd say every other month we do something similar to this, where we bring in subject matter experts and have a nice conversation about topics that are interesting as it relates to IoT and incorporating those types of devices and paradigms into your organization. So we do meet, as I'd mentioned, about every other month with this, and then on the alternating months, we have a working group meeting where we discuss topics and then develop content that's useful to our members. If you're interested, it's open to all ACT-IAC members. Nancy, who just spoke, can get you invited to those. So I'm excited today I'm going to turn this over to Pete here in a second. One of my co-chairs to talk about powering a digital asset platform with AI. So we're going to get into AI today. Everybody wants to talk about it. We've got two great guests, Maria, who I've met before, and excited to hear from you again, and Jay, who I just met a few minutes ago. Really looking forward to hearing you guys' insights, not to take away from the conversation. So I'm going to turn it over to Pete. Pete, it's all yours, my friend.
My man, brother Mike, thank you. And everybody, Mike Burkholz, along with Sam Navarro, are the government co-chairs for our working group, which is, again, under the veil or the umbrella of the Emerging Technology COI, Community of Interest. And again, I'm seeing some chats. Thank you to everybody who's sharing the Zoom link out to others. If they didn't register, to get the link, hey, you know, it's in your inbox somewhere. Check your spam folder. But hey, we are excited. And Nancy Delanoche, thank you big time for giving us the opportunity with our working group to just share more about what ACT-IAC's doing to create this open government vibe, which is about participation, transparency, and collaboration. To be clear, the Emerging Tech COI has a number of working groups. And again, I'm looking at my notes. If you're wondering, it's not that I can remember everything, but I figure what the heck. And the same with Maria and Jay. We're going to have this fun, and we want you to communicate through chat when one of us is not speaking, and we will of course make this available to watch later. But there are other working groups. Shout out to the blockchain AI, our working group, DevSecOps, and Quantum Knowledge Group. I see my colleague Tim Gilday, who along with Rob Werman are the chair and co-chairs for the Emerging Tech COI. If you have met these folks, they're awesome and support us tremendously. Again, we just want to provide content as often as we can, yes, about IoT and smart cities and infrastructure, but today we also want to make sure that folks know that everything we talk about is rooted in infrastructure and innovation and entrepreneurial spirit, which our guest, who I will introduce now, Mr. Jay Hajeer, the CEO of IOMOVO, which you will learn a lot about today, both from what it does, what makes it special, and Jay himself, who I've gotten to know over the past year. He actually presented out in Minnesota at the DOE Cybersecurity and Technology Innovation Conference and was a big hit. And you'll hear about him, his team, and what they're doing inside government and beyond. We will talk cloud, a little AI. We'll talk all kinds of cool stuff. And then I don't know what to say. When somebody gets a week of celebrating them when they leave government, I may have had 2 minutes. Maria had Maria Roat week. I love Maria. She's a sister from another mister, and I remember that. Let's celebrate Maria. Hey, without further ado, Maria Roat, who, what a career in government, like myself, really grew up in government, served our country. You know, we love seeing and hearing from Maria, but she's kind of doing what I do now. She's helping people, this, that, and the other, get to know who's who inside the Beltway and beyond, but also appreciating the fact that I do. She has a perspective that we'll share today on all things in her former life, but in her current, and a lot of the optics into a lot of the legislation driving AI and cloud. So That's my intro of these two folks. Parking lot, chat away. We're going to open up for some chat questions that I will facilitate towards the end. We're going to hard stop right at noon, but we hope you enjoy this. So without further ado, Jay, why don't you tell some folks a little bit about you, your personal and professional journey, and what you're up to these days.
Excellent, excellent. First of all, I'd like to actually thank ACT-IAC for this opportunity, and obviously Pete and Maria and the rest of the participants. A little bit about me. I've actually spent a good, at least the initial part of my professional life out of electronics engineering, designing engineering, down to circuit boards, building computers, and building information, ISPs in the early stages, and then moved into government after 2001. And a lot of it is building about systems and large systems infrastructure. I focused merely initially on being the trusted advisors, especially on the technology side, for a lot of the CIOs, CTOs, and deputy CIOs. And my main role was to actually have a deep understanding of the mission objectives, the challenges that are actually facing a lot of these agencies, and I've been to quite a few of them, anywhere from the State Department, Department of Homeland Security, the Intel community, Department of Commerce, and Interior. And the best part of that is actually to understand the technologies needed to address these challenges. And over the years, we implemented many different systems. In this case, we call it AI today, but like in the State Department, we deployed facial recognition system, biometric matching, and we deployed that in a distributed environment and whatnot. Over the years, part of what I ended up collecting, what really happens within the government? What are the nuggets that I can actually identify the challenges throughout the government agencies? A lot of the systems within the government, we build structured system to take in structured data and to be able to actually output the structured data. It's about the in and out of the data. Most of it is actually either structured within a database or goes into to create reports or interact with citizens. So that was one of the challenges. Most of the systems, it's about structured data, structured input. But if you take a look at the data across government, that only makes up maybe about 10% of the amount of data that sits within the government. Data is actually generated, or at least content is actually generated within the government that is not in the structured data. We're talking about emails, we're talking about documents, PDFs, videos, audios, collections, and even if you're talking about surveillance data and whatnot, all of that is unstructured data. So we got a huge amount of data that gets actually built over the years. So as we transition from a technology perspective over the years, from having to build systems to migrate into the cloud, to secure in the cloud and everything else, the CIO, or in this case, the challenges that's actually facing, it's a huge amount of data that's completely unstructured. That's the digital assets. Most of it is actually, whether we're converting from docs to digital assets, these assets sits in the storage and they are distributed across government. In this case, we've got data that is actually connected to many different agencies trying to interact with a lot of cloud, whether it's in a box, Dropbox, OneDrive, a Drive, and all these data is actually a huge amount of data that the agencies is trying to get a hold of and trying to understand the challenges of doing that. Archiving the data, or to be able to, because you can't get rid of it, you don't understand what that data is.
Question. You're getting into the cool stuff that I want to save a little bit to, but that to me was a nice placemat, if I may. And to our audience, what we wanted to do is make sure you understand there's passion behind what Jay's addressing, and everything you said, from the volume, velocity, variety, veracity of data, cloud journey, structured, unstructured. Some of these buzzwords that we know we will distill as Jay gets into, hopefully, Jay, some of what makes the platform a usable tool to address those mission challenges. So I just wanted to say, let's get into that.
Exactly. This is what's the basis for what I'm trying to build on. I'll leave it back to you.
Yeah, man. that was Pete's polite, like, give him the hook. He's giving all the juice away. All right. Jay, that was awesome. Thank you, sir. Maria, what have you been up to? Talk a little bit about maybe what Jay said in terms of these are still the same types of challenges and missions that or mission or challenges that is that the government's dealing with, cloud and data and too much of it, and how do we manage it? But what have you been up to?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. You know, since I retired from the federal government, I took a break, you know, for about 5 months and went completely off the grid. And I'll tell you, that was probably one of the best things I did. I just went away and stayed away from people. I needed that break after what, 40 something years, you know, working. And I'll tell you, since I retired, you know, I hung up my shingle about 1.5 years ago, doing a little bit of board work. In really looking at continuing to track what's going on in the federal government, right? The AI, the executive order, you know, of course, you know, when I was still working, it was, you know, the cybersecurity, the executive order, everything's going on. And I'm still staying, you know, if you look at my career path, Pete, and you guys, and Jay, know, I think you guys know this, right? I've always leaned in and looked ahead. I've been an early adopter of technology, of course, where it makes sense, and knowing how to build things, right? Being in the construction business. And I've done that throughout my whole career, just being in tech, moving from the mainframe to where we are today. And really over the last year or so, I've been working with companies, and I've been also working with some agencies on really looking at strategy, how you incorporate, you know, some of the newer technologies, not just, you know, some of the things that you have to do, but helping companies really lean in on some of the adoption and how you start with the use cases and really thinking through some of the approaches. So, you know, with some of the board work I'm doing a little bit behind the scenes, I'm also doing a lot of traveling too. You know, I'm doing 30% work and the rest of it's, you know, my free time. I just want to make that clear. But yeah, again, you know, with the board work and working with some companies, working with some very small companies as well, as they're trying to, you know, be those that really drive and how you incorporate some of the newer technology and capabilities into their services, and not just in the government, but in their corporate services as well.
Well, Maria, thank you. And again, for folks on the chat, we really do encourage, you can ask a question to Maria directly or Jay when they're not speaking, and they'll do their best to respond. Please do that, and I'll do the same, but I'm as much a listener here. So thank you, Maria. And what we think this conversation is going to be about is we will hit on technology. Jay mentioned some things, but we really want you to walk away saying, wow, and this is what Mike expressed. We like to celebrate thought leadership. We're doing that today with Jay and capabilities. There's so many technologies out there, but Maria, you nailed it. You know, helping companies and government on those strategic journeys, whether it's to the cloud, to use certain data, to protect it, what's the mission need? And everybody listening and watching this, we hope you understand, and Jay will highlight some of it, where they're doing great work. It's different at every agency. So without further ado, I want to just also remind my colleague and sidekick, Miss Jennifer Hitchcock, is putting some references that we will not ask you to read, but there's going to be some good material in things like the executive order, the OMB IT operating plan, memorandum 2209, what may come up again regarding zero trust and so forth. All right, with that, Jay, I'm going to kick it back to you because I have a couple questions, some of which have come in already to me directly for you. But let's go back to IOMOBO. You gave a contextual what's going on with the world with structured and unstructured data. But when I think about what I was attracted when I first met you to is this idea of leveraging AI to revolutionize collaboration, asset management, and search process, right? There's the tactical of using the cloud, and whether it's what you're doing to help digitize assets to make them findable and searchable, to make actionable intelligence available. Talk about IOMOBO in the heart of the capability.
IOMOBO was built based on these particular challenges I discovered. You know, input output kind of capability, data in and data out capability, and the discovery of the data. You know, we talk about probably 80% of the data that is actually generated by any agencies. All of it is unstructured data, sits across distributed storage. And to actually pull that data in, to be able to even archive it or move it when we do in a cloud migration capability, or we're trying to actually secure the infrastructure. A lot of this data, it's unknown, especially when, workforce retires, actually move between agencies. That knowledge that stays within the content, it is not passed on, not discovered, not able to transition. So developed IAMOVO because I found there's no solutions actually out there. And I deal with a lot of different vendors across, commercial as well as the government, especially when we're doing a cloud migrations or developing these systems. So the objective is to reach out to that particular storage. That was the first layer of developing IAMOVO, is to connect all that data as a centralized location and normalize the access to all that data. So everybody referring to it like a multi-cloud interface. It's not. It's about really integrations as a hub that integrates to all these particular reachable storage, and to add the security layers desired by the government, using, identity and access management and whatnot is required. So connecting all that storage, bring it in, and especially with agencies, they deal with AWS, Microsoft, Google, or IBM, is ability to actually reach to that data and have it in a central location that you can access it, move it, do whatever you need to, but keep it under the umbrella of security. Okay, that's one. The second is, how do you discover that data? So since the data is, a lot of it is unstructured, we need to be able to identify and run through it. We've taken, as part of the implementation over the years, implementing AI technology or machine learning technology, is to be able to do that discovery component of it. What does that mean? If we're talking about video, audio, or PDFs, or Word documents, you got to be able to distill it, to be able to say, run it through an AI engine, to be able to actually summarize it, to be able to identify metadata of it, so that you can actually do cognitive search capability. But the Gen AI added to it on the top layer, so you can actually communicate with it, ask it questions, and interface with it with obviously simple languages. So we've added all that as bold into the technology, which is the second layer of the hub, the IO hub capability. The hub is just the connections. And then obviously the added layer is the AI components. So how we would actually deploy. If we're trying to basically pick a specific AI engine, and stick like with Microsoft, AWS, or Google, that would limit the capability to be able to do that. Knowing the government is really not being choosy, you get basically whatever contract vehicle vendor relationship that you have. Ability to have that in a marketplace, or at least in a hub location that they can pick and choose. They can bring in their own AI engine, but we added the intelligence on top of that to be able to identify the challenges of one AI engine, the maturity of it, and how we can actually utilize that data to be able to take advantage of it and to discover that data. So once the data is actually discovered, it tagged, ability that you can actually then classify that data, and to be able to then to interact with it. And that's one of the challenges, as with the executive order, is to be able to say, okay, what do we have? What kind of information do we actually exist? How do we actually take advantage of the AI? How do we have that AI components of it to actually help serve the government? And obviously efficiency, productivity, all the, the buzzwords that would actually be required with that.
Yeah, so Jay, I was going to say, this is where I think, like when I was at SBA as the CIO, we had this huge blob of storage, right? We had some database, but we had tons and tons of unstructured data, 50 plus years of it. And this is where I think, when we start using AI and the capabilities, right, being able not just search it, but to tag that data, to be able to do that. My head, I think in terms of possibilities, right? And having this huge blob of unstructured data, handwritten PDFs, all kinds of media, where having this capability would just be huge to gain the knowledge and that insights and understanding on all of that content. And as you're talking, it really keys me in on, some of these big use cases that where this could really make sense, right? And really advance the agency's mission and what they need to do.
Yeah, so a lot of this we know about AI is about development models, right? A lot of it is okay, how do we actually protect this model? How do we make sure there's no bias within the model? Every single agency has its own mission, and a lot of the content that is undiscovered, the undiscovered data, need to create it under its own model. So we can say, okay, if it is SBA, is about helping small business. So we got to run that data through and develop its own model that we can actually then be able to bring it in, use it across government. Same thing with, human health services, same with other agencies. Even the intel community can take advantage of building these models that they are actually be accessible across agencies. But to move the data, for example, in the case with SBA, we've got AWS, we also got Microsoft Azure, we've got a lot of net storage, network storage attached, we've got storage distributed. And to be able to discover that was very difficult, and moving it was even more difficult. Since you're paying for storage, the key is that particular storage usable? Can we actually then start tiering it and archiving it?
So Jay, let me jump in. And again, for the group, I see, I love the dialogue happening with some of our guests. Some of the questions regarding quantum and specifics, we hope that we can allow for you to connect with Jay and some of those capabilities, and Maria bringing it home in terms of application. There's still these challenges of so much data, and how are we managing it? Like digital asset management. Damn, interesting. Damn it. No, it's a buzzword, but it's really basic. And the way you've explained connecting data, discovering data, classifying data, interacting, we all know that's what agencies want and need, but being able to do that easily and in a streamlined manner. Jay, I'm hearing you say that the IO Cloud, which serves as your central repository, the IO Hub, which is a collaboration hub, which is, again, folks, you got to go look at it, maybe do a demo with it to understand and see it, right? Picture's worth 1,000 words. But the heart of your platform is this IOAI cognitive engine. And I found that to be very intriguing earlier in the year when I met Jay, prior to any executive order coming out. But I did a little search on the wonderful executive order that Jennifer Hitchcock put out there today. I mean, there's a couple references to cloud in here, but it talks about storage and it talks about usability and how to use this data to collaborate. So I will put that out there, Jay, or back to you. Is there, this platform with this three-pronged approach, maybe give us an example of how are some of the agencies or customers, without naming names, you're working with, are taking advantage of these capabilities?
Absolutely. We've, so the reason we created a digital asset platform is to make sure there's a lot of tools available for modifying messaging or doing any of this for the data. Prior to the executive order actually coming out, we were tasked by Department of Commerce as they put out requests for comments on AI accountability. And this is what actually will feed the insights into that executive order. And so they received over 1,800 different responses. And the mandate for them is within 60 days, they have to turn around back to the executive branch, their findings about AI accountability, So what we ended up doing is, okay, we need to treat this as being agnostics in a way that we understand these responses. We got to figure out what these responses are. We've taken two different approaches. One is running it through AI engines, multiple engines, to be able to summarize, identify the insights, identify the qualitative data that will be required, so we can actually submit to the agency providing the report a distilled version of what all these inputs are about. And then we took a second approach, is that we got to manually validate what the AI is actually providing to make sure, does this actually make sense? So we went through all these responses to be able to, at least, does the AI do a job well enough that it can actually then summarize, or at least provide the insights and the sentiments to be able to validate this response. So that was, if you're doing a lot of requests for comments of any kind across the agencies, we quite a lot of do, is to be able to feed these inputs into the AI engine, so you can create a lot of these what I call meaningful insights and sentiments that gets created and the summarization of it. So it helps speed up the process of generating, the report back to, in this case, back to an agency, or, obviously a lot of data calls can actually happen that way.
So this was really qualitative and quantitative, right? The results coming out of this, right?
Correct.
Because I've heard you talk a little bit about this before when you were working with the agency, and I found it really interesting because, not only did it speed up the time, for these 1,800 responses, but it really took into consideration the nuances of what people were actually saying in their responses, not just that they were sending, web links but really going through the papers and the attachments and things like that, so that there was not just quantitative, what types of businesses were responding, but that qualitative and that sentiment analysis. I think that was really important. And I think about that because the CDO Council way back several years ago was doing some work around, responses like that, for public notices and things like that. And I look at, and that was probably 4 years ago. And now you fast forward 4 years to what the capabilities are now in the project, this one that you're talking about. I'm like, this is huge. Just the difference in how fast and how quickly things changed.
Yeah, well, our task was only 30 days. The agency had plenty of time to give them that information, but that amount of data being really crunched into to be able to create this insight was really, that's where I see the value of at least some of these AI engines that we actually deploy.
So Jay, we have a question coming in. If we can jump in, and we hope that those of you listening and watching, again, there's a sense of, we try to keep it at a high enough level, but a lot of this challenge of too much data, too much unstructured data to create the actionable intelligence. Maria, I'm going to ask if you can kind of maybe use for example at some of your agencies of, hey, we're getting there, but we still have a long way to go. And please, for everybody, just because there's an executive order out, we're still waiting to hear what is this specific guidance, and none of this is happening overnight. This AI executive order says a lot, but there are companies like IOMO already helping agencies that's trying to make sense of data. So just want to remind everybody, there are IT priorities in fiscal year 24, which are cyber security, IT modernization, digital first customer experience, and data as a strategic asset. Taking that, how you, whether you sell into government or you help with those who sell into government, that's what the agencies, all 432, are facing. What do we do with a lot of this, and how do we make sense of it? So the question, Jay, my organization's mission doesn't focus on media content. What type of use cases should we be looking for or in a digital assets management platform?
Very nice. A lot of the agencies, especially that we work with on the consulting side, is how do I get data in? How do I get data out? In this case, a lot of data sharing there across the government, especially if they're trying to share reports, bring in input, bring it from many different storage capability. And this is where the IO Hub come in to allow us is, okay, I want to connect to Box, I want to connect to Dropbox, I want to connect having a portal so I can actually receive the data. I want to be able to do that, and I want to be able to do that securely. This is what we put into the IMO, is ability to give the agencies if you're just doing data exchange, if you're trying to actually exchange data and to do that securely, if you're trying to connect to a lot of storage, especially in the SBA, they bring in a lot of forms and files to be able to submit that. There's a lot of tools that actually then the government not easily used and not integrated in this case to, like if they're using Azure Storage or if they're using Amazon or any of the Google Cloud capability. This one way, ability to allow it to sync from anywhere to anywhere, give the ability to export this out. So in this case, in this particular agencies, if they do an end kind of data sharing, and if they're exchanging between any of the clouds or between citizens and agencies, it's all implemented within the IMO capability.
Do you find yourself, Jay, when you come in and help, is there, can you talk to the partnership with not just the agency, but you work with some of the agency's integrators? I mean, this isn't a plug it in and it just works, correct?
A lot of it is out of the box, but a lot of customizations. We partner with a lot of many different vendors. Well, we got the storage vendors, well, that would be like the Dropbox, Box, and everybody else. We also got the cloud vendors, whether it's
Okay.
Microsoft, AWS, Google, or anybody else, because we bring in the API component, the integration capability. And we do it like with the Adobe as well. We create plugins, ability to be able to extend that capability and to work with a lot of these vendors. So that way, when we advise the agencies, we're not being we're being agnostics, really, regardless of who you have, we'll have that plugin available.
So Maria, I'm going to pivot to you, because what I'm hearing Jay says is we don't come in and say we can fix all your problems. We kind of need to know what problems we're trying to solve. And when you go back to your days at SBA and Homeland Security and everywhere you've been, White House, transportation, how do you help companies like IOMOVO understand your problems?
Yeah, great question, Pete, because I kind of I'll put my CIO or my CTO hat on, right? And I think about, especially this whole digital asset management space, right? Data, as a CIO or CTO, I had data all over the place. Pick your cloud, pick your platform. I had data all over. And having the ability to access that data where it is, and I didn't have to like build a huge data lake. I didn't have to do any of that, but being able to access that data, being able to tag it, being able to use that data from where it sits. So I think a real simple example, think about your comm shop, your public affairs shops, or anybody who does, work like that. They take videos on their phones and they store it somewhere. And then are they going to download it? Are they going to bring it somewhere? But accessing that data where it is and being able to bring that together, I think is pretty significant. And that's a very simple use case as your public affairs office. But anybody who's pulling in data and you've got it in multiple places, you need to tag it, being able to translate it, right? Even if it's a video, bringing up the speech on that, right? Tagging it, captioning it, doing all of those kind of things. And I think that's, in the comms example was really like the first one I thought of that kind of came to my head that says, they've got data all over the place, whether it's media or pictures and things like that, and being able to search it, right, for a picture of somebody, and being able to tag it and being able to do that automatically, not manually. I mean, think about the productivity savings around that. That's huge.
It's interesting hearing you say that, and Jay, maybe back to you, from a CIO perspective. And again, we're the ACT-IAC community. There's emerging tech, the application. We sometimes, as technology folks, I used to be in government. I understand it's, there's meeting the mandates and then there's going beyond. And sometimes those use cases, which might be in a public affairs office, are significant and resonate with that public affairs official who has tons of social media and videos and they have to manage it. How are you getting to those mission owners, and how is the conversation with CIOs that you have today, happening? Are they resonating? They're like, well, that's not what we do. We keep the lights on. How do you compel a CIO, chief data officer is probably not as hard, to say, I need to see a demo of that. Here's how it can relate to the IT priority of cloud journey.
Let me pick at least on one agency, okay, that really has, we'll take that particular use case from the public affairs office to like Voice of America and USAGM, where they deal with 50 different, broadcasts at the same time. So multiple different languages, multiple different distributions, collaborations, internally and externally, reporters in the fields, social media, and so on. Most of what I call the media asset management, in this case, instead of digital asset management, focused on the media. Tagging and assigning metadata, it's a manual process. Okay, there's the ability to run a lot of this through an AI engine does not exist today within that particular media assets. So what we did is okay, we will treat these digital assets and we run them through an AI engine, and to be able to allow them the collaborations in and out of the agency, as well as providing it within the agency between these language centers. as well as, in this case, to be able to identify the search capability, the cognitive search capability, then they extracting the knowledge out of that data. So running the data through an AI engine to be able to do the captioning, to be able to translate it, and to be able to collaborate with, especially the pre-broadcast broadcast stages or post-broadcast stages, is to be able to identify after we run it through the engine, gets the metadata information, ability to be able to search for a specific sentence or word across many different assets, or in this case, even the OCR, obviously recognitions of any written words within the videos and whatnot, and creating information on it, and how all that information to make it to be searchable. And this is where we're able to demonstrate that to a lot. If you're looking for when an administrator has been visiting a specific plant in North Dakota or somewhere, to be able to just be able to quickly says, okay, I'm looking for this particular information and give me that clip to run through after it's already been, and to be able to extract that specific segment.
Sound bite or something like that. Yeah.
And to make it available just like that. That's the whole beauty of really having utilization of AI engines on top of that.
Is Voice of America a company, an agency? Not a lot of people, I mean, I'm not speaking for the masses, but don't even know it exists. But so much of what we see on television and how it's presented, we know there could be manipulation, because there can be, but just being able to, oh my God, the secretary of so-and-so said this, that's a great snippet. It's not just a tweetable moment or an Xable moment, whatever they call it now on Twitter. But that's, to me, that at your fingertips capability.
Yes.
Leveraging AI in the cloud to provide an insight or to quickly put something out that is important to be seen is something you're doing with your customer, your client, or with the Voice of America. Did I hear that? Okay.
That is correct.
Okay.
The assets themselves, so we took it a step above the media assets. Then we actually put it images, audio, as well as, in this case, PDFs or Word documents or even Excel. Treat it the same way, running it through the engine, an ability then to recall with the cognitive capability of the search, any kind of data set. So if I'm saying, if somebody mentioned, President X in history, to be able to pull it through all of my assets to be able to extract these particular documents, or in this case, the standards, guidance, and everything else, to be able to pull it through and present it to, in this case, to the user, without having to do extensive amount of Google search for it. Since it's already your own data, you already run it through the engines, you extracted all that metadata, regardless if it's media, audio, video, PDF, Word documents, and we're even extracting that to the Office 365. They can actually do that with you as you creating these documents as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm actually laughing, Jay and Pete, because I had a thought come to mind, because as you're talking about searching and being able to look for a segment, a word, a thing. When I retired, it took forever for NFC to find a document that was submitted into their system, into their HR, payroll, finance system. It took them forever to find that document. It's part of my retirement thing. I'm talking like a couple of months before it turned up. Even though I submitted my copy, they had to have it from the system. And I think how quickly that could have run through and found that particular document, because it had my name on it and a certain thing on it. So sorry, I was just laughing about that if anybody was watching. And I thought, where was this, 2 years ago?
Well, that's I go back to the
So we need to talk to Gary Washington and the NFC folks.
Oh yeah, well, I think he's kind of busy on some stuff regarding what's going on. And hey, by the way, we got Miss Tamika Kirk in the house, who's an incredible thought leader at the DOE. So it's nice to see you, Tamika. Mike Burkholz brought up a great question. And again, not to pivot into security and secure by design. And of course, there's some measures, but, Jay and Maria, when it comes to this leveraging cloud, maybe step out of IOMOVO land for a minute, but capability wise, we're talking about managing data and securing data. I like Mike's question. Remember, this IoT working group the Internet of Things, the zero trust environment we're moving toward. I'm seeing some post-quantum encryption, and there's a group for that. But the reality is more devices, more connectivity, more potential vulnerability and threat. How do you address security, cybersecurity, Jay? And Maria, put on that hat of, you can't, there's no silver bullet, but there's ways to do risk mitigation, maybe things like the National Cyber Strategy you want to speak to that address this sort of world we're moving into and living in, which is everything's connected. Jay?
Yeah, I mean, been in the cyberspace, a cybersecurity space for quite many years. And when I've taken this with the design team, security is a main component of what we do. And as we identify the challenges of a lot of these vendors, we're trying to actually create that layer that adds that security on top of their shortcomings. And regardless of any storage vendor or even AI vendors, we take that, especially when we do the collaboration and sharing, ability to make sure we're taking that consideration. Zero trust implementation, that's another hat of mine that I do and support a lot of CIOs with, is how do we take the amount of data that actually comes in from a lot of these input devices, for example, whether you use your SIMs, all those kind of component, eventually it's a huge amount of data, right? A lot of it is the same way. You got to filter through, create a lot of this to be able to have a meaningful insight so you can mitigate it. So not necessarily taking that to that deep within our IMOVO, we wanted to make sure at least contain that and secure, and to be able to extend whatever storage. However, if it comes to IMOVO, we'll add that security layer on top of it. So
I like it. And then just before I jump to Maria to comment a little bit on this kind of cyber angle of everything, remember, everybody I think can read 800/160 and trusts that, you don't bolt on cyber, you try to build it in. And, even if it's not your one tool, you're strong as the weakest link. And I just want to remind people that, just this past June, the administration's cyber priorities, in the 2025 budget, in addition to what we have to do this year, which I mentioned earlier, which is addressing those 4 pillars in the IT operating plan, Claire Martirana and the CIO councils writ large, they're focused on cyber, modernization, customer experience, and data as a strategic asset. And I heard Jay and Maria say it some way, shape, or form, that if we can drive key insights into the decision-making process by harnessing accurate, available, and actionable data to power intelligent government operations, that's a good thing. So these are words that agencies are being asked to do, and industries being asked, come help us do it. And I hear IOMOVO has a lot of that capability, but you need to have the conversation and the opportunity to show your capability. So Maria, talk to the cyber angle or whatever is on your mind based on what Jay said about, hey, we still have to make sure we make it hard for the bad guys and gals to break in and mess around with our digital assets.
Yeah, with all the work that's going on around zero trust and cybersecurity, and it's all about the data, right? I think I've said that before, right? What data you have, where is your data, how are you protecting your data? So there's a lot around already in process, right? People are already working on this, the zero trust, the maturity model. Some agencies are a little ahead of others, but there's a lot of progress being made. And of course, the CDOs have a significant role with the data protection, where it is. And you just look at like you said, look at the executive order and what's written in there. But I think for the big picture, right, agencies have to have that capability, right? They're enabling this operating environment. AI is another tool in the toolkit, right, to enable the mission. That's the big picture piece, right? Enabling the mission. And the capabilities from a CIO perspective, from an agency perspective, right? You want that resilient infrastructure, the cloud, the network. You have to make sure you're secure and you're compliant, and really being cognizant of mission need, mission risk, and really having that understanding. So it's not just about cybersecurity, securing the data, but what is your data? What types of data do you have? Structured, unstructured data? How do you know about that data before you even start building out any of your models? you still need to have, that, like I said, that resilient infrastructure, the clouds, your network, security, of course, and that compliance, and then really honing in on the mission and the mission need. I think with AI and the capabilities that it brings, this is going to bring even more the mission and technology together. I know there's AI chief AI officers that are going to be designated, but this is yet another opportunity, just like the CDOs, to bring the technology and the mission even closer together, and not just at the agency level. When you step back, look, Pete, at the CX executive order and all the things that are going on around CX. My head thinks in terms of possibilities, right? If anybody who knows me, I think, well, what if, and what about this? And I think from an enterprise perspective, there's a huge amount of opportunity to use some of the capability securely to drive better services.
So I have to riff because that was beautiful and eloquent. I know it's 11:48.
I don't know about eloquent, but
it was. You used one of my favorite words, resilience. And again, we're gonna pivot to this. Jay, give us a sense of what's on your roadmap here over the next couple of months, right? And I know there's a great question in here about policy and regulation. And hey, folks, we know that when executive orders come out, it'll probably be followed by something, and then by something, and it'll always say something like in 270 days from this order. I see industry like IOMOVO and folks, come show us what you have, because it might be something that it can inform a policy. But yes, there's a lot to read and consume. Least of all is this executive order. But here's something I love in the executive order, and Jay, maybe this will allow you to kind of springboard. In the end, AI reflects the principles of the people who build it, the people who use it, and the data upon which it is built. I've heard you today say we can help manage that for you. We can use AI, and we can do our best that trustworthiness and security are a bedrock in terms of the IOMOVO platform. I heard you say that, but in my version. But talk to us about, what do you want to see yourselves get done before the end of this fiscal year that we're in now in the government space?
Yeah. Well, since the executive order came out with a whole lot of timelines driving it, right? Beside having to have guidance and principles that governs AI, establish the AI Council to be able to, collaborate across, making sure that we've got at least training the executive, or at least the staff, to be able to be aware of the AI technology. Through the evolution, there's a lot of industrial evolution. I'm not going to take a whole lot of the history lessons here, but just to be able to say that understanding the original, industrial revolutions, automations and machinery revolution, the digital revolutions with the, computer evolution, and then the disruptive technology. The disruptive technology, which is cloud, AI, virtual reality, 3D printing, and so on. We're embarking on to the knowledge revolution. And this is where I see these particular models being across government and commercials, building their models around, in this case, the mission needs. And this is where I see the AI Council can actually benefit from this. As we created what we call the marketplace to allow us to plug into a lot of these cloud and AI components, I would see that creating these models that is connected together. So it could be, SBA, it could be all these agencies connected at some hub to allow, in this case, efficiencies, productivity, security of layers that it allows, and then in this case, the maximization of the AI benefits, and put guardrails around it is, challenges. As it evolves with these disruptive technologies, there'll be more layers added to it from a complexities yet simplicity. And what we are trying to do is create that platform to allow these models to be connected together. In this case, we obviously have been focusing on commercial models that is evolving with its OpenAI, Gen AI capability and whatnot. But we can consider creating a similar model at the agency's level because every agency is going to really start to utilize AI, play with it, and figure out how they're going to use it. I think we can help a lot of these agencies make advantage of this.
Maria, you want to comment on the policy legislation component?
Yeah, the AI executive order took tons and tons of input from many, many people from industry just across the board, and really touched on a lot of the big things for the country, not just federal agencies. And of course, OMB is very focused on the federal agencies and others. And the question was really around, how do you keep up with the changes that we're not keeping up pace with the rapid advances in technology? And part of it is balancing, how soon do you come out with policies, right? Big policies like the executive order that impacts the nation, right? And looking at it from what the United States is doing on a global level versus an agency perspective and what the agencies are doing. So there's always a balancing act there. But you're spot on that there has to be, much like the AI executive order, took input from industry, from others in forming the policy and legislation. And I think there needs to be more people on the legislative side that are really tuned in and smart about technology to really set, what are the laws and what are those guardrails, as well as from, the White House perspective and executive orders, and listening to industry and listening to very smart people in the federal government, from NASA and DOE and many, many other agencies that are already working in many of these spaces. I will also say that sometimes we need to just get out of our own way, and that sometimes we don't need a policy. If you're working within an agency as a CIO or a CTO or others, sometimes you don't need a policy to go do a thing. So I just want to foot stomp that people do get in their own way when they're trying to do things, especially within components, bureaus, and agencies, and being able to do things without having a policy to go do it, right? Well, we don't have a policy for that. Well, okay, so what? Do we need one? We can go do things even without a policy or something behind it. So just a little perspective on, big picture legislation, executive orders that really address, nationwide and where we stand globally, and as well as policy things that impact at the very programmatic agency level.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. I was actually, with all due respect, I was checking out this really cool link that Jennifer just sent from Georgetown. So folks, this is really, in the spirit of, we're trying to give and convey an opportunity for you to go understand more about how we can apply, in this case, AI to our mission challenges. I can tell you that the Federal CIO Council Innovation Committee is very laser focused on the impact that AI is going to have across multiple domains, from data officers to AI officers to human capital officers to procurement officers and acquisition officials and financial officers and human cap. So that's, to me, a takeaway that let's not look at AI as it's a technology executive order. It's the impact that it's having on the, if you will, mission. So to just close out and give Jay and Maria about 10, 15 seconds for their parting shots before I hand the mic back to Big Mike Burkholz, my brother from another mother. I took away something today, which I hope others did. Go read about digital asset management. It's not just another data governance conversation. The knowledge revolution, love that, Jay, which is making sense of information, moving up in that hierarchy of wisdom of data becomes information, becomes knowledge. That's important because the people who need the information at their fingertips needs to truly be able to make those real-time data-driven decisions, which could affect life, the clean water, the air we breathe, the food we eat. That's what brings back to, I love Maria's term earlier, the resilience of our nation's most critical sectors. That's the mission, and there are only 16 of those. So think about this conversation in that context, and shout out to Iamovo and Jay for having that thought leadership to say, hey, if we put the data in a place for you to make those decisions to mitigate risk to those sectors, our work is done here. So amen to that. Jay, back to you for your parting shot.
Yeah, just one thing is we don't want to forget the workforce. That's one thing that, reason we're doing this AI is to actually empower, in this case, the workforce to be more productive and more efficient in what they do, regardless of these technologies. Giving them the knowledge that they need is exactly a lot of it, not just only what the executive order is asking for, but in reality, these are really the benefit that comes out of what we do. We're doing this to benefit the agency, but really at the lower level is benefit the individuals using those technologies.
Reskill, retain, recruit. We hear those 3 R's a lot. Tools like IOMOBO are clearly helping that. Amazing. Maria, parting shot.
Yeah, this goes to both industry and corporate that are, folks are already using AI for cybersecurity, event management, all of those things. But for working in the mission space and delivery space, I encourage people to start small with low risk use cases on some of these, kick the tires, prove them out, learn from them, and then just grow from there.
Wonderful. Very succinct and to the point. You folks had a better parting shot than I did. I rambled a bit there. Hey, all right. But that's what I do. I'll suck the air out of a call. Hey, I'm going to pass it back to Mike. And Mike Burkholz, close us out.
Great. Thanks, Pete. And thanks, Jay and Maria. And I'm going to echo what Maria said. Start small. Start somewhere. Start small. And I'll also say AI is becoming like the weather forecast. If you don't like it today, wait till tomorrow. Thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate your time. I think are taking a break next month for our group, but please check out the COI meeting next week, and we will be back, the IoT working group in February with some more content. And anyway, thanks everybody. Have a happy holiday, and wish you all and your families the best this month. Thanks.
Thank you.